All right, welcome back to part 2 of the CFB Nation All-America podcast this week. We just discussed Pat Fitzgerald's surprising and not controversial, just shocking ouster at Northwestern, where that program sits right now. But now we want to talk some college football, some actual college football, some fun summertime college football talk, some over-unders. Bill, you ready to join me?
Let's do it. Thanks for having us on as always. Are we doing Big 12 today? Is that what we're doing?
We are doing over-under totals. You pick 5 teams that you want to talk on the over-unders and explain why you say they're going to go over or under. And I will pick 5 teams and explain why they're going to go over and under. And then we will talk some Big 12 storylines with the Big 12 Media Days opening up. Brett Yormack will take center stage, and he will tell us once again that the Big 12 is still open for business. He wants to he's done a great job. He's been fun to watch. I saw someone compare him to Larry Scott when Larry Scott took over the Pac-12 and had all these big dreams. He was going to take over. He's going to scoop up half of the Big 12. If you remember, started the Pac-12 network. He moved the Pac-12 headquarters to San Francisco, and Larry Scott's tenure is not remembered very fondly. So if I'm Brett Yormack, I don't necessarily want to be compared to Larry Scott, but maybe he can bring the bluster and then actually back it up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's going to be the talk. It's going to be weird for farewell tour for a couple Big 12 schools, but Yormark's just done a fantastic job of having a self-awareness about that conference and keeping it going despite losing its 2 biggest brands, and I look for that to continue. I am anxious to see what he says for sure.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So first, we're going to get into our over-unders and a Troche trivia question. Over-under related. And you probably already know the answer to this.
Oh, no.
You always know the answer to my trivia questions, but this one will just be straightforward, and then it could lead to more discussion of some of these teams. Who, among Power 5 teams last year, exceeded their over-under total by the most amount of games? Who won more games over their projected summertime over-under preseason projection? So think about that, and we will get back to that at the end of the show. See if you can figure it out. And now we'll go into our over-unders. I'll kick us off. Okay. And I am going to start right at the top, baby. Georgia, 11.5. And I am going – now, remember, it's only 12 games. It's not – you don't get the SEC championship game. Obviously, you don't get a bowl game or state play. So it's a 12-game regular season. Georgia's over-under, incredibly, is 11.5. So the question is, do you think they're going to go 12-0, or do you think they will not go 12-0? And my guess, my pick is under. I know Georgia will be favored pretty much every game, but I just think it's more likely than not that they will trip up somewhere along the line. I think, the offseason hasn't been the smoothest for Kirby Smart. They've got a new quarterback. Teams, as we talked about on a podcast a couple weeks ago, teams don't three-peat. They've won 27 regular season games in a row. So in order for this over to hit, that number has to climb to 39 regular season games in a row. I just feel like their focus is going to slip at some point. Stetson Bennett was a great leader, a steady presence. They got a new offensive coordinator. And, I understand it's going to be a huge upset against whoever it might be, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida. I just think someone catches them napping.
Yeah, I would probably take the value in the plus 110 and the over and make somebody beat them, because I still firmly believe they'll be 10-0 when they play Tennessee. So I would go. I mean, yours is a smarter bet, because it's just so hard to bet on somebody with an 11.5 because you have to be perfect. So I think the smarter bet would be to bet the under, but I would still just seeing plus 110. And that's one of the better values. I mean, I would probably go, if I was putting $20 on it, I'd probably go Georgia and the over and just say, I'll believe it when somebody beats them.
All right, you give me your first team. Who you got as
I
far
mean,
as an over-under
yeah,
prediction?
I'll start with Ohio State as usual, unless that was somebody you took.
Nope.
So Ohio State, I mean, they're another school where I just believe 11-1 is there. I mean, they'll
So
win.
their over-under is 10.5,
I will
correct?
take the over. I'll take the over because I'm already starting 9-0 in theory. Because if they lose to anybody but Notre Dame, Penn State, or Michigan, then it's going to be a story around here. They haven't lost to Penn State since 2016. They play them at home. They've never lost to Notre Dame in my lifetime, and they're the better team on paper. So I think they go to Ann Arbor with an 11-0 record, and I've already won the bet. So I think they're one that I would jump on at 10.5 because I'm still betting on the talent and the over again -105. They would have to lose 2 of those 3 games, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. That's the way you got to kind of look at some of these high over-unders is the schedule and where the bumps could come. My next team I want to talk about Oklahoma. 9.5 is the over-under. I'm going under.
Mm-hmm.
Sooners, they're 6-7 last year. Defense was ranked number 99 in scoring and 122 in total yards. And we think they're going to jump up to 10-2 this year. I was looking at defensive coordinator Ted Roof kept his job. He's been at 13 schools since 1990, and he's been at Georgia Tech twice and Duke twice. So basically 15, you can call that 15 tenures in 30 years. So it's telling me if he was more successful, he would not be jumping around so much. They got 7 starters back on defense, but I'm not convinced that's a good thing for them. They did lose 3 games by 3 points last year, but again, that speaks to inexperience at the head coach. And I think Venables, he obviously he's only going into his second year. He's still going to be an inexperienced head coach. I think they will improve on 6 and 7, but I don't see them, a team that was picked 3rd in the Big 12 in the conference preseason media poll. I don't see them going 10-2 this year.
Right. I agree with that. And so I'll build on that with the team that I've got at 9.5. And I typically take over on all these teams. So like Oregon at 9.5, and you look at their schedule, there's another team that I could see going under because of the schedule. They're at Texas Tech early in the season. Texas Tech feeling good about where they're at.
They are.
They're at Washington. They're at Utah. And all that is before they play USC and Oregon State. Now, granted, those games are at home, but they're in November. And if you lose 2 games, who knows where your mindset is in that Pac-12 at that point. So the Ducks, I mean, Bo Nix is back. Dan Lanning's done a very nice job. They are super talented. That's a tough schedule. So they're one of the few teams I've got circled as I'd probably take the under, even though, like I said, as you'll see with my picks, I like going over most of the time anyway.
Okay. All right. I can see that. Yeah. I mean, we have our little love affair with Bo Nix on the podcast, of course.
We do. We have to mention him. We're Irish Breakdown mandates. Does he have any Notre Dame ties? I think they make us mention him every time.
Well, speaking of Notre Dame, that's my next team. I don't know if you have them on your list, but I've got the Notre Dame over-under is listed at 8.5. And this is a simple one for me. I'm just going over. I'm going over with the Irish, and it boils down to the schedule. Okay. They've got 3 big games: Ohio State, Clemson, USC. And I think they get one of those 3. Not sure which one, but I think they will get one. And then I think they get tripped up somewhere else along the line to finish at 9-3. Depending on they could go 2-1 in those 3 games, right? I mean, they could if Sam Hartman really meshes with these young receivers and offense takes a big step forward. But I can see 1-2 in the big 3 games, and then I can see 8-1 the rest of the way, and crossing that 8.5 threshold.
So, of those 3 games, which one do you think you would pick them to win? Most likely to win of the big 3?
I'd say Clemson, although Ohio State is at home as well, and
it won't be easy, right?
In September, and I don't know. Ohio State sometimes takes a little time to get going, and if you catch him in September at home and Hartman really has a big day, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Right.
So, yeah, USC handle Notre Dame. That one's going to be at home for the Irish as well. So, I don't know. I just think one of the three, and if I had to pick one, it's weird that I'm thinking the road game. But
Right.
that's probably because the big win over Clemson is fresh in my mind from last year. But they've got, like I said, they got Clemson, who they beat last year, and then the other two are at home. So
Right.
1-2 or 2-1 in those games.
Right. Yeah, and I could see that happening. Yeah, an 8.5. I like them to get to 9 anyway. So here's a tough one that I've thought through a little bit. Texas is, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I still think they could win the Big 12. But if I was betting on it, just off past experiences, 9.5 looks high, knowing they have to play Alabama right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you look at their road games, I mean, Baylor, that's going to be tough. They go to TCU, that's going to be tough. They go to Texas Tech at the end of the year, that won't be a layup. Their farewell tour has all kinds of irony because they're sending them to those Texas schools. They're sending them to Houston and Baylor and Texas Tech. So those are going to be rowdy places because it's their last little, can I say double birds on the air? Like that's their double bird moment to Texas. Like, see ya. You're gone. It will be interesting to see how that goes. So I would probably lean the under on Texas on 9.5. And if they could still go 9-3 and lose to Alabama and still win the Big 12. So I feel like I'm hedging a little bit with that.
You're hedging. You've been big Texas all off season. Right. What's going on here? I thought you'd say Texas 11-1, no problem.
Well, if they get to 10, then I think they win the Big 12. And they could beat Alabama. So it's a risky pick, but if on the value of that bet too, where we're plus 105 on the under, when I see these bets, I kind of like look at the low plus ones that I'd rather take the plus 105 than the minus 125.
Okay. All right. I just I thought you were a big Texas guy. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm, like I said, a hypocrite.
All right. Wisconsin, 8.5. I am going over. I believe in Mr. Fickle. They got no Michigan on the schedule, no Penn State on the schedule. And, I like the Phil Longo coming in at offensive coordinator. That's a gamble. We don't know what it's going to look like. I'm going to bet on the positive. The air raid comes into the Big Ten. You've got a SMU transfer, a quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, who I'm thinking there's going to be some big things for him at Wisconsin. It's definitely a gamble, but we'll see. They got 8 starters back on defense. They only gave up 20 points a game last year, and Fickle's Cincinnati defenses were always very good. So this team, they should beat Washington non-conference. If that happens, there should be 3-0 out of the league. So in order to cover this bet, they only have to go 6-3 in the Big Ten play. They've got Ohio State, but I think the rest is manageable to go at least 6-3 if they can sweep their non-conference.
That'll look easy when they win the Big 12 West, or the Big 10 West, which is what they should do. So, I mean, yeah, you trust Luke Fickell, trust the talent, and trust that schedule. That's a good bet. Kansas is at 6.5. I was just looking at, 6.5. And their non-league is Missouri State, Illinois, and Nevada. So if Kansas beats Illinois in Lawrence, they're 3-0. Remember how much I ripped on Kansas last year and made fun of them?
I do.
I think I would take the over with Jalen Daniels if he stays healthy. I think they can steal enough in the Big 12 and go 2-1. And then all they have to do is go 4-4 or 5-3 in conference play, or 5-4. Yeah, I'll take that. I will take the Jayhawks. I think they continue to saw they got new threads for this season that look good. That's one of those low budget, picks that I think they can do it. So I'm going to go ahead and take Kansas to win 6.5.
I mean, we had Lance Leipold in the College Football Hall of Fame, did we not?
You did, and some sports writers did. I was
ended up 6-7. So
cynics like me were like, you got to win. But Jalen Daniels, certainly when you have, preseason Big 12 quarterback of that caliber, they can get in the 1-score games in the Big 12 and win. They'll be fine.
Right. All right, my last one, I am going Pittsburgh. They are 6.5, and I am taking the over. They have been quietly very good. The last 4 12-game seasons, I'm kicking out the pandemic season. Last 4, they've won at least 7 every time. Their defense just seems to get rebuilt over and over. They have 6 starters back from last year. BC transfer Phil Jerkovich is coming back to his hometown at quarterback. And I think if he stays healthy, which he couldn't do behind a shaky offensive line at BC, he's going to provide enough offense for the Panthers to win 8 or 9 games. Non-conference, it's Wofford, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. And even though that's 2 Big 12 teams, I think they'll be favored in all 3 of those games. And they also have Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and BC in conference, which are 3 of the lower level teams in the ACC. That gets you to 6 right there. You only need 1 more the rest of the way, so I like my chances.
Yeah, Pat's quietly got that thing rolling.
He does.
And that's a good bet. That is. So this is my last one, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have fun since everybody has already asked me this question all offseason. Colorado 3.5, which, by the way, given the news in our last podcast, I would probably take Northwestern 3.5 in the under because they're just set up for a disaster season.
Oh, yeah, that's going to drop. That'll go to like 2.5.
I'll get it now before that gets to 3 or 2.5. I'll take Colorado and the over.
Ooh.
I'm going to go 4 and 8, and I'm trying to pick the ones where I think I can win. If they beat Colorado State, they beat Stanford, and they beat Arizona at home. That's 3. Arizona won't be easy. It's late in the season. So they've got to steal 1 road game somewhere. It's not going to be Oregon or TCU. It's probably, if they could steal Arizona State, Washington State, UCLA, steal one of those, and Dion has some sort of thing going, they can get to 4. So if I was betting on Colorado, I'm more apt to take them going 4 and 8 than 3 and 9, and watch that number go up if they, for some reason, give TCU a good fight in the opener. They could beat Nebraska at home. They could beat Nebraska. They beat Nebraska the last time they played them in a ridiculous football game. And I've watched enough ridiculous Nebraska football games to know that it could happen.
That was a Scott Frost-led Nebraska football.
Right. So we'll see.
They have a new coach now. His name's Matt Rule. So he's been in the NFL. He's rebuilt some programs. It's no longer Scott Frost. Colorado, take me through September for them.
Oh, they'll probably be 0 and 4 or 1 and 3. They just got to get 1 a month for the first 2 months.
It'll be ugly.
They're going to lose to TCU. The Nebraska game, I'll say it could be exciting. They should beat Colorado State. They'll lose to Oregon and USC. And then they'll be 1 and 4, and then it lightens up a little bit. Once you get through that and out of sight, out of mind, which Dion might be at that time, I think they'll win some games.
All the guys who transferred in will be trying to transfer out by the end of September.
Yeah, if they have enough bodies to play in these games. But I'm still, like I said, of those 2, I'll take Colorado 3.5 because, again, Bill, I've been asked this question all offseason. What do you think is a success for Colorado? And I've stuck with if they go 4 and 8, that's a success.
It is. So reviewing Ohio State, the over, Oregon, the under, Texas, the under, and then Kansas and Colorado going over. You got a sort of Big 12 feel to your picks.
Yeah, well, it's a Big 12 week. I could have gone with Michigan and Penn State, but I'll pick the same things I always do with them. Michigan 10.5 is a little antsy because they've got hype, and I know how it goes when they have a ton of hype. And Penn State 9.5, they better be perfect because I'm still picking Michigan and Ohio State against them.
I'm going Georgia under. I'm going Oklahoma under. Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and Pitt are my overs. So I'm writing those down. We're going to revisit them at the end of the season. We're going to see what happens. I don't remember who won our picks contest last year. Do you? Was it me? Was it you?
Yes, you did, but it was close. I think you won both. You won the sweep. You won the bull contest too because you picked TCU. So
that's right. I did pick TCU over Michigan.
You also picked TCU to cover against Georgia, I think.
That did not happen.
That's the one you did not get. I just show up for the title games. I did have Georgia covering. So
you did. All right, so let's get into a little Big 12 talk, and then we will get back to my Troche trivia over under question. Big 12 storylines. So Texas. You just talked about them a little bit. I think your answer is going to be no when I ask you this question. Is Texas going to run away with this thing?
No, but I think they could win it, which, the Texas is back hype. I do think they are very talented. And, when Urban Meyer said that over the summer, that he thinks they may have the most talented roster in the country, some people kind of, what's he talking about?
Talent's so along those lines, Athlon Sports preseason annual that I respect. They do a good job. They do position rankings within each conference. Texas was number one across the board in every position in the Big 12. Athlon determined Texas had the best personnel.
Yeah, they should be good. But it's winning the one-score games. I saw that in ESPN had a nice breakdown of Big 12 media days this week, round table with Dave Wilson and Heather Dinich and some others. And that's what the conference is. It's about one-score games. And, your future can change really quickly. So they've got to win those. I still think they are fully capable of going into Bryant-Denny and winning in week 2. Will I pick that? No. Oh, will I pick Alabama to cover? Probably not. And then I'll sit there, and if Alabama's up by 3 scores, I'll be like, what the heck was I thinking? But yeah, Texas not run away with the Big 12, but definitely good enough to win it.
Yes, I agree. I'm warming to Texas as we go through this off season. You started me on the Texas bandwagon about a month ago, and the more I read, the more I look, and the more I look at the rest of the conference, I'm feeling like, yeah. History says they're not going to. History says they're going to underachieve, but I don't know. Kind of like what I see on paper, at least. Will Neil Brown save his job at West Virginia? He is squarely on the hot seat after 4 years in Morgantown.
I don't think he will, because I think it's going to be another uphill struggle for the Mountaineers looking at their roster. They've got to run the ball better. They've got to get back to some things. It's a tough place to coach. It's become a tough place to coach because, again, NIL, transfer portal, I think we talked about this a little bit. It's one of the 10 poorest states in the country. And that's not breaking news. It's been like that for a while. So where do you come up with the money to attract recruits? They had a nice niche when they had Rich Rodriguez and even Bill Stewart. They've struggled in the Big 12. And I think maybe if they don't go to a bowl game, if they don't get to like that 6-7 win mark, that they'll probably move on and look for somebody else as we get into the 12-team era. And I just see that happening.
Right. They're 5-7, 6-7 in the last 2 years. And one of the problems that Neil Brown has had has been scheduling. Mm-hmm. They have scheduled 2 Power 5 non-conference opponents every year since he's been there. And they play 9 Big 12 games. So they're playing 11 Power 5 teams. So when they go 5-7 or 6-7 or whatever, like it could be a couple games better if they scheduled smartly. Well, and this year they've got Penn State and Pitt.
Yeah,
they got 9 Big 12 games at Penn State. So, I'm going down their schedule for this year. They got Penn State to open on the road. Duquesne is a win. Then they got Pittsburgh. I don't like their chances in that game. Texas Tech and TCU opens up Big 12 play. I think they're 1-4, and I don't think he gets out of September.
So you want me to start that list now? No, it's the same thing. 1-4 with that schedule. And then the back 9, so to speak, they're playing Houston on the road. They have to go to UCF. That's not going to be easy. And then they go to Oklahoma and Baylor.
I don't know what their deal is with scheduling Pitt and Penn State and all these other, they played Maryland and Virginia Tech, who's not been great, but just like, you don't have to do that. You're West Virginia.
That's a 4-8 schedule. And, tough because when they hired Neil Brown, I thought it was a home run.
Right. Yeah, it just hasn't happened. Who will be best among the 4 newbies? UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati. What's your guess?
Like year 1?
Year 1 this year.
Probably UCF. Probably because I like their quarterback a lot. I think he's a playmaker. I like Gus. I like his system. I think it's going to, when you play against Gus in that system, you're going to run into some problems if you haven't seen it. in their first month, they can get started, beat Kent State. That's my wife's alma mater. Sorry, Kimberly, they're going to get beat. The Boise State, Villanova, that's 3-0. And then their road schedule's tough. I mean, Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma. Wow, that is tough. Maybe I should have backtracked this. And Texas. No, but I still think, Cincinnati's in transition with their coach.
Big time. Cincinnati and Houston are not coming into the league at the right time.
Correct.
They have had their high points. This is not one of them. So their high points were enough to get them in the conversation and get them eventually to the Big 12, but they are not coming in with guns a-blazing.
BYU with Keaton Slovis, I don't trust as much, even though they'll have a veteran roster that can play. And they've played enough Power 5 schools that I don't think playing in the Big 12 is going to be like a change of speed issue for them at all. So, but I'd still go UCF. I like Plumlee. I like Gus.
Yep.
Be interesting to see what kind of attention Gus gets from the SEC if he starts to win in the Big 12. And I think he's at peace with that. So I'll go with them.
Yeah.
Are they going to go to the playoff in the final year of the 14 playoff? Boy, would that be an irony.
They're the only team with a national championship of those 4 schools, right?
They've got one claimed anyway. Yes.
One last thing in the Big 12, TCU. What do you think? They, lost a ton to the draft, right? They lost our quarterback, second in the Heisman voting, Max Duggan. Did well in the transfer portal. Had some Alabama guys who weren't breaking through on the depth chart come to TCU. Trey Sanders at running back and Waddle. Who is the wide receiver? JoJo Earl at wide receiver. Another, highly ranked guy from Alabama who wasn't really cracking the depth chart. We'll see what he can do at TCU. They lost a ton. They lost Garrett Riley. What do you think? What do you think of TCU this year?
Well, they'll still be fine. I don't know if they'll win the Big 12 again, but, Sonny got the transfers in there. He's got a system they believe in. I think last year's playoff run was a nice infomercial. Do I think they'll go 12-0 again? Probably not. They lost a lot. And it's hard for programs like that to recover. I think they could have a season kind of like Cincinnati had last year, where, they went to the playoff.
Right.
You lost a ton of guys. You're still good and competitive, but they'll lose a couple. But fortunately for them, the early season schedule is very manageable. I'm just peeking at it here. They could very easily be 6-0 when they go to Kansas State, and what a couple thrillers they played last year. Now, after the bye week, their November schedule's tough. Texas Tech, Texas, Baylor, and Oklahoma. I don't know where they'll be, but the impossibility of repeating that run against ranked teams, because that's very easily could be 4 ranked teams at the end of the season. So could they run through that gauntlet again? Again, 1-score games. I'll just say it over and over again. They will have to be sharp in those. But 9-3, 8-4 is not out of the question at all.
Yeah, they're going to be fun to watch. That was a good comp, good call on Cincinnati and how they followed up their playoff season. All right, back to the Troche trivia question: who exceeded their over/under projected total the most in 2022?
Well, so is TCU not the right answer? I'm going to say TCU, knowing I'm probably wrong, but I'll go with TCU.
TCU is number 2 in the country. Their over/under was 6.5, and they went 12-0. So they beat their over/under by 5.5. There is one school that beat their over/under by 6.
Give me 1 second to try to figure this out, because I'm trying to figure out who else that would have been that maybe went to a New Year's Day 6 bowl, and I don't have it. You just tell me. I know I'm going to be mad.
We discussed this coach when we were discussing the Northwestern opening.
Oh, so Duke
over/under of 3,
and they won.
They went 9-4.
Nice.
Year. Yes.
So
9-3. Then
I knew TCU was too easy, but I also knew they did have a big jump. Well, yeah, Mike Elko, Duke. You're going to need a Duke shirt, because you've been talking about Riley Leonard and Mike Elko all summer.
So the bottom 5, you want to take a crack at the bottom 5 last year? The bottom 5 and over-unders in the summertime. So Duke was one of them.
Mm-hmm. It was probably Kansas.
Kansas was one of them, and they got 6 wins.
It was probably Illinois. No, Illinois was better. Never mind. It was probably Pac-12 would have been Colorado, right?
Would you say Colorado?
Colorado, yeah.
Yes, their over-under was 3. They're of the 5 worst teams, the 5 lowest over-unders, 4 went over. Colorado was the only one that went under.
So. Who else went over?
Arizona.
Okay, yeah, they went.
Their over-under was 3. They got a 5, and Vanderbilt.
There you go.
Over-under was 2.5. They got 5 as well. So they were knocking on bowl eligibility there. So that was there's the trivia question. You missed one.
I know. It's
breaking news.
The streak is over. So I was racking my brain trying to think. My logic was, who was in the New Year's Day 6 last year that wouldn't have maybe expected to be? But Duke, they played in a high-level bowl game there. A lot of good hopes. So that was a good one. I got to tip the cap. I'll get you next week.
I'm going to put that on Twitter. Believe me, that is going to be a tease for this podcast that I stumped.
Yeah, you got me.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, again, for listening to this week's CFB Nation All-America podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next week.